Yet again, another young artist dies at the hand of pharmakia. Juice WRLD, another typical and factory-like produced image of degeneracy and despair, a perfect example of what postmodern culture provides in an artist: death. Like most artists in this realm, drug abuse, dysfunctional interpersonal relations, depression, and ultimately nihilism is put to drippy melodies of melodic and hypnotizing design, providing nothing more than a message of despair, confusion, and emptiness. A good question could be, why and how has this type of music become so popular? Why are these types of dark and empty messages so accepted? And why is it that all we are seeing in result of this type of music is death and the slow decay of our generations? I will attempt to provide answers to these questions. Let us dig in. Let's first distinguish two categories. One category being that of the entertainment artist, influencer, or celebrity, and the other being that of the general population, or average person, mainly of the millennial and Gen Z groups. I will utilize each of the two categories to paint a picture that demonstrates some reasons why we are seeing and experiencing these socio-cultural dilemmas of today. To start, there are two main concepts that I believe carry much of the weight when it comes to these dilemmas. One being nihilism, something I've discussed rather thoroughly, especially in my The Strangest Youth Culture in History video. But more important and more specific to what we are seeing right now in our culture is a concept that I would like to share called depersonalization. I believe a great deal of the problems we are seeing today regarding culture have to do with a mass illness and condition of depersonalization. What is depersonalization? And not to be confused with the type that can be conjured by poor sleep quality or bad diet, but the kind that is conjured via trauma, substance abuse, and psychological conditioning. Depersonalization can simply be described as an identity disturbance, distortion of self that produces enduring feelings of detachment or estrangement, causing confusion, anxiety, and depressive disorders. Let's start with the first category, entertainment artist / influencer. Narcissism plays an establishing role in all of this. We're living in a society today that cultivates narcissistic behavior in its culture, not merely through its superficial culture of cosmopolitan consumerism and viral celebrity, but mainly through its technological simulacra, or the social media hall of mirrors, in which no one really knows who they are and exist only to achieve the gaze of the other via screens, and systematically develop their false selves by attempting to get an audience to mirror their behaviors, as if people do not know they are real, until the other signifies their existence through a like. The endless battle to be seen, a structured colony of dancing and relapsing monkeys, artificial people that attempt to act real, and can only understand reality through a lens of memes. Thoughts and culture become minced and juxtaposed strata of memetics. Life becomes irony folded over itself to the point of existential absurdity. Actions and interests are mere mimicry. Self-esteem becomes an aesthetic. An identity is shopped for and purchased like winter sweaters. Subsequently, you will also find identities change with the seasons. Life becomes a dream, a corporate brand campaign with working nostrils, movie-like, and in many cases, completely virtual in digital format. Welcome to the year 2020. Entertainment artists like the late Juice WRLD and all the others only get to the position they are in through this level of lack of self and essential narcissism, the obsessive need to be seen and adored, revered for one's special uniqueness or talent. In other words, the spotlight, as it is so called, tends to be a haven for the narcissistic personality, like a moth to a flame. The pattern of this all is fairly simple. Of course, it all starts with a lack of God and a stable worldview, followed by abuse or trauma, usually in childhood. These children grow up with a hole within them, a void. that is filled by the creation of a false self, which ultimately demonstrates itself through behavioral narcissism and ameliorated through the attention industries, whether that be film, music, and now social media. This is why you'll find that most celebrities and musicians not only come from abusive homes, but they have been sexually abused or severely neglected from a very young age. XXXTentacion is a perfect example of this pattern. The next stage in the pattern comes in the form of addiction. The narcissist is always addicted to something, and all addicts suffer from a form of narcissism, described in putting one's needs of something over all else, regardless of the circumstances. This is why you will find the majority of artists and musicians are heavily addicted to substance abuse and, of course, the accompanying sex addiction. This pattern is prevalent and very easy to spot. Attention, drugs, and sex tend to be the addictions the entertainment artist suffers from most. And it is essentially their lack of God and dis-ease of narcissism that brings them to this point, the point of a nihilistic worldview and a state of depersonalization. Here is where the real dilemma sets in. The entertainers become famous and infect the entire society with their illness through the accumulation of fans and industry media support and promotion. We call this the enabling faction, that which normalizes, justifies, and lionizes mentally ill and spiritually corrupt personalities. From here, this is how culture is ultimately created, through the systematic formulation of these synchronistic processes. As they say, do it for the culture, or do it for the gram. If they only knew what those statements actually meant. But let us continue. So as we can see, mainstream entertainers become entertainers because they have a void within them that exaggerates the need for attention and recognition, a toxic desire and irrational need to be seen. Not merely seen, in fact, but famous or infamous. Their toxic narcissism and comorbid mental illnesses lead them to addictions that usually end up in their early demise. The strangest part is when the general public reveres these types of personalities, and it is usually because they identify with them, because they either suffer from similar illnesses or have been conditioned to through the technological simulacra our generations are trapped within. Their reality has become so distorted and misleading that they no longer make decisions for themselves and have no way of seeing outside of the cultural paradox they have been consumed by. Now let's talk about the general population. Second category. Especially those born after, say, 1996. They're all part of a new breed of human beings. Literally. Their brains are wired completely different due to being raised in an era where technology has replaced many human instincts and behaviors. And no, this is not something called progress, though the establishment will love to fool you into believing so. An important point to address here is that though neoliberal postmodern industries promote demonic and psychologically damaging material as cultural norms, it is the general public and mainly the fans that create what is popular through their consistent support and mirroring. My contention is that they are stuck within a simulacra of social media sorts that has blinded them from reality. In fact, it has caused a fissure, a dissociative reaction that has developed into a mass epidemic of depersonalization. People are no longer genuine people. They are avatars and profiles, handles, and online personalities that do not carry over into the real world. Living a double life is no longer specific to extramarital affairs, but today, it is a sociological norm. In fact, alleged real-world things are established in the digital realm and take precedence over the physical world. Like how relationships today aren't considered relationships unless they are updated so on Facebook or established visually through endless look at us posts on Instagram, stories, and, well, you know the rest. Hereby, the actual physical relationship is ultimately less experienced than the experience of the attentional response given by the virtual audience that exists in the digital abyss. We call them social media communities. the main focus isn't actually living out the relationship in the real world, but instead, the focus is placed on the perception of those watching and reacting in the virtual one. Again, it's like staring into the mirror for attention while completely ignoring the physical person in front of you. The current generations live a virtual existence, detached from the physical one, detached from their own bodies even. Identities are dysfunctional, hence all the gender and identity dysphoria we find so common today. False selves appease the non-existent true self through social media engagement at the expense of real-life engagement and communication. All of this develops narcissistic features and mechanizes human behavior in a way that conditions humanity to behave more machine-like and transactional and less authentic than what God has originally designed. Here we see why these sick individuals like Juice WRLD become famous, because the lot of society are clueless followers who cannot differentiate healthy from unhealthy, good from bad, moral from immoral. They simply devour and consume what is fed to them in large portion. As their loins and flesh assume position, the cycle continues in the form of viral culture. Even the word viral, which refers to virus or disease, perfectly explains the nature of this cycle, perfectly describes how and why it moves the way it does. Indeed, society is sick and diseased, hence the viral culture of today. Another important point of this current generation is the fact that they have been raised in a way that has robbed them of healthy interpersonal development. Most teens and 20-somethings today have developed their capacity for communication and interpersonal relation through screens and not authentic human contact. This dynamic has systematically restructured and rewired the human brain and has resulted in the depersonalized nature of society that we are witnessing today. Growing up in this technopolic society of screens and alter egos and multiple selves, this generation has suffered a dissociated and detached socialization. Mind you, this has never been tested prior, checked for safety or possible future results that may be negative. No, it was thrown on society like a blanket. No questions asked, no limitations drawn. Why do you think so many are insecure, depressed, unable to take simple criticism and in need of safe spaces and refuge? Why are people today so lost and morally bankrupt that they would even consider death culture as demonstrated by the likes of Juice WRLD? Because this generation is completely lost and lacks authenticity, truth, and of course, God. Hence their ignorance, sexual obsessions, and drug addictions. Lacking true identity, they latch on to entertainment personas for a semblance of reality, in which I argue is a hyper-reality. See, humans were never designed for this level of asociality, detached, technological existence where screens replace the real world, and postmodern relativism replaces truth and order. Why do you think we are falling apart? Because capitalism? The big bad patriarchy? Don't be silly. Humans are biopsychologically breaking down. The result is mental illness and depersonalization, which leads to addictions, depression, anxiety, psychosis, nihilism, and of course its logical end, suicide. Popularized and worshipped death culture is at hand. Another big problem here is the internet influencers that reciprocate and reproduce the illness. Internet personalities narcissistically exacerbate the problem by reconstituting the artist's messages and culture, by promoting it and making it relevant for their own personal gain, in the form of likes, views, attention, and career. They popularize degenerate mental patients for the sake of nothing more than cultural popularity and vapid virality, all while lining their pockets at the expense of humanity. Now take a generation that predominantly gets its sense of self and human engagement through screens, then add drugs, porn, and autoerotic addictions, all of which rewire the neural pathways, mind you. You will have the result of an entire generation of dissociated, atomized, and narcissistic humanoids. and big tech is only getting bigger, while genuine human interaction and authenticity is only getting smaller. How do you think all of this will play out logically? Think about it. We are so depraved and mentally disfigured that today, strippers, druggies, and prostitutes are the moral agents of sociological influence. But let us not forget that it is a requirement to be mentally ill and spiritually broken to be a stripper, a druggie, or a prostitute. Sex is not work. It is a means to reproduction and a glue that complements marriage. Anything else regarding it has been indoctrinated through the very psychotic and narcissistic culture industry platform that has been the prime discussion of this video. Stable, authentic, and complete humans would never participate in these degenerate realms, let alone even promote them and show open support. Hence the majority of society today that is unstable, narcissistic, spiritually detached from God and their own humanity, i.e., depersonalization. In a postmodern culture where pluralism supersedes logic, bad and good as categories do not exist, and amorality with relativism maintains the role of socio-cultural guidance, all you have left is nihilism, which is ultimately death. The culture of death.